Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast episode 50. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Scott Johnson.
And this is the podcast where we have two guests on every week and have them gaze into the future, into the distant mists, and make up some stuff about what's going to happen.
Is that what we do?
Yes.
Yeah, we have some great guests with us this week. And you want to do the introductions?
Very excited. I'm a big fan of David Malki, owner, creator, proprietor, Wondermark.com, and co-host of Tweet Me Harder.
Hello there. Welcome. Welcome to my show.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert.
It's so glad that you've joined me here. And please, take it away.
It's an honor. It's an honor to be here with you. Also joining us, Amy Elk, voice actor, software programmer, and podcaster, and person who let me sign her shirt.
Yes. Thanks. And I want to thank David for having me on his show. So,
It was very nice of you to make it. It was tough to coordinate our schedules. I'm very glad that you were able to push Oprah aside and come on my show, which will.
yes.
And that wasn't even a schedule. That wasn't even a scheduling thing. She just shoved Oprah for no apparent reason.
Yeah,
Well, she was in my way. I mean,
it was very nice of that passerby to kneel down so that Oprah would tumble over her back. But she got herself on her feet, surprisingly nimble for such a sort of middle-aged lady.
She's light on her feet.
Keeps
We
herself
call it
in great
Oprah
shape.
tipping here in Salt Lake.
oh, nice.
Let's start with a prediction from one of our listeners. Frank Daniels wrote into fourcastpodcast@gmail.com and said, I was thinking back to 8th grade chemistry when we used electricity to separate the hydrogen from oxygen in water. This is regarding one of our previous guest predictions that we would eventually get rid of all of the water in the Atlantic Ocean and turn it into arable land. Frank continues, all you would need to do is trap and compress the gases. Then when you need fresh water, just recombine. This would have the advantage of leaving all the impurities behind.
Interesting. So we get a lot of ecological ideas and stuff from our listeners. It seems like we get a fair amount from our guests as well, but it seems like the listeners are really deep into how can we preserve water? How can we have more water in the future? How do we eliminate the need for certain kind of energy resources? I find that fascinating that seems to be on the collective minds of our listeners and watchers rather than in the future robots will have only one eye and, you know, things that I would normally think of. So I guess that's good for humanity that we have that kind of listenership.
I think Frank is off his rocker here because the whole point of what Terry was bringing up was we get rid of the Atlantic so we can live and farm in the land that is left behind. If we use electrolysis and separate the hydrogen and the oxygen and leave all the impurities behind, then we got a bunch of dirty land.
And nobody wants dirty land, Tom.
Does anyone want dirty land?
Only if it's full of fish skeletons.
It would be full of
Excellent.
after a while it would be full of fish skeletons. I think at first it would be full of a lot of floppers.
Do you remember from the popular conception of the first Thanksgiving, Squanto teaches the pilgrims and all those guys that were in the Peanut special to plant maize, and they put a fish on top of that hump of corn.
Right. It helps it grow or something.
It seems like when you drain the Atlantic Ocean, you're going to have the most fertile. I mean, there's so many fish.
Yeah.
They're already going to fall to the bottom of that surface, you know, the sea floor.
Right.
And so the fish are going to already be there. You're going to save so many man hours of having to manually place them there to grow your, I'm assuming, corn, since that's the most cultivated crop by large corporations, which seems to be the people who would drain the ocean.
That could be a prediction. Is in the future, all food will be corn.
Yeah, a corn or a corn derivative. I feel like you probably can get not everything out of corn, but at least all the good stuff. Like anything you cannot make out of corn, you probably do not want.
Well, we can make plastic cups out of corn now. We can make baggies out of corn.
We can make chicken nuggets out of corn.
We can make chicken nuggets out of corn. We can make, if we can make French fries out of corn, we have your entire meal.
Yeah, as somebody who has to avoid corn for 8 days out of every year, I can tell you corn is in everything.
Yeah.
Why do you have to avoid corn for 8 days?
I'm Jewish, and so over Passover, you're not allowed
Passover.
to have corn.
Okay, right. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I didn't realize that corn was part of that. That's interesting.
Yes, it's a long story, but yeah. I actually did some research as to why corn is not allowed, and it's a big, long process. And
so does it have to be like, here's just a question for you. Does it have to be like actual corn, like on the cob, good old-fashioned grandma just boiled it for us corn? Or are they saying like you got to check ingredients on Coke to make sure there's no corn syrup in it? You got to make sure that those chicken nuggets don't have that corn syrup?
No, nothing. Yeah, again, the corn syrup is actually a double whammy because the stuff that they use to ferment high fructose corn syrup is actually not kosher for Passover, just all by itself.
On its own.
Yeah.
And corn syrup's in everything.
Yeah, corn syrup is in everything. It's
in the iPhone. It's in seat back cushions.
It's on my iPhone.
Yeah. You can't get away from corn syrup. All right. Well, thank you to Frank for sending in the email. You can send us your predictions, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com, or post them up at fourcastpodcast.com. Let's get into our predicting now. We're going to start with the short-term predictions. These are things you will happen sooner than later, maybe in the next few years, but we're not really putting a time limit on it. And Amy, we'll start with you. What do you see in your short-term crystal ball?
All right. So I predict that within the next 50 years that cancer will be a non-issue. We will have either found a cure or we will make it so preventable and treatable that it will be sort of a non-issue the way polio is now. And the reason I say that is because I'm actually very active in doing fundraising for breast cancer research and things like that. So I stay up on all the news that's come out. Earlier this year, they've actually started developing a vaccine for breast cancer already. And I think it's supposed to go into human trials either late this year or early next year. So, I mean, and so much has happened just within the last, 50 or so years. I mean, you think about 50 years ago, if you had cancer, that was basically a death sentence. And now it's still a big deal, but it's much, much more treatable. So I think within the next 50 years, cancer will be a non-issue.
Do you feel like it's a blanket fix for all, in that time frame, for all forms of cancer, that we'll get to the root of cancer-causing agents and therefore skin cancer takes the same dive as pancreatic or whatever? Or do you feel like do you feel like we're going to get one of them down first and kind of move our way through the rest?
Yeah, I think one of them is going to really open the door for all the rest of them, because there's one thing all cancer cells sort of have in common, and that's that they just multiply at a ridiculous rate. So I think once we can sort of lick one form of cancer, I think that all the rest of them will fall in line pretty readily.
Now, isn't cancer sort of a catch-all term for isn't it like car accidents, where it's like there's a million types of car accidents that all may have different causes and different prevention methods, but it's sort of an umbrella term for a group of similar things that may have a lot of fundamental differences? Or am I misunderstanding cancer?
I'm not an oncologist by any means.
But play one on TV.
Yes, exactly.
Luckily, play one on internet TV while you're here.
Yes. I think yeah, you're right to a certain extent, but I think there are certain things that all cancer cells sort of have in common, and I think there's a lot of the pathology is sort of common to most cancers. So
it seems like the one thing that they do have in common for sure is that they're rogue agents. They behave in ways that the body is not able to stop them behaving in, like. And so when a cancer cell decides, bah, I'm different than you, and it starts doing its thing, all cancer cells tend to have that same property. If we can figure out a way to sort of get a way for the body to sort of take back the power and say, nope, sorry, your little weird growth over there ain't going to happen today.
So you're calling for a fascist human body, then? You're calling for something that's going to quash any individuality. Like, let's think back to the caveman days. I'm being serious here. Let's think back to the caveman days. For hundreds of thousands of years, all these cavemen were doing what? They're got their clubs. They're hitting dinosaurs. Maybe there's a saber-toothed tiger. They're doing all the regular caveman stuff. And then one day, some caveman said, Fire? Yeah, let's do it. No problem. Let's run with this. If there had been a human immune system that was going to quash that individuality, we never would have had civilization. We never would have had written language. All these things that stemmed from just one guy having some or lady having some kind of a weird idea. Now, bear with me. Do you think that cancer-causing cells are the human cells trying to evolve, trying to go to the next step? And just these are the first few iterations of, and they're harmful, and we don't understand the benefits to these mutations. And in many cases, there are no benefits, at least on the short term. They kill the host body before they can give them superpowers, that sort of thing. You know, on a long enough timeline, yes, you will grow wings and fly, but you die horribly 50 years before that. Like, we just haven't seen that expression of it yet. Do you think that, like, let's say instead of trying to stop cancer, we say, we're going to run with this. We're going to give you a shot. We're going to give you 100 years human DNA to figure out we're going to accelerate this growing pains process and see what you're trying to get to, and then we'll see. Maybe we are shunting this next massive evolutionary step forward by trying to stop cancer.
Well, I think you have an interesting point, but I think one piece of it that's sort of missing is healthy cells will, you put a bunch of healthy cells in a petri dish, and they will sort of multiply, but then eventually reach sort of an equilibrium where they all kind of coexist, and then they multiply and die off at a sort of regular rate. Cancer cells don't do that. Cancer cells just take over everything. So I think if cancer cells weren't that way, that you have an interesting point. But I think if were we to let the cells take over, they don't want to coexist with the healthy cells. They just want to take everything over.
It's where you define whether it's a cancer cell or not. I think that's important here, right? If it's the caveman guy who's lighting a fire and says, hey, let's try throwing the meat. Some meat fell in there. Maybe that's a cool thing to do with this. That's not a cancer cell. If it's a caveman who discovers fire and goes around burning everyone and sticking the torch into everyone's gut, that's a cancer cell. So you do get rid of that guy. But, I think there's a point you can say, like, when the cancer cell starts killing, then it's not worth the trade-off. Up until that point, maybe it is a good mutation. Maybe it will give us wings. Let's hold off.
I don't know. I feel like we had to somehow domesticate animals, right? There was a period in which we had to do this. The first wolves who were taken prisoner by man were probably very violent, or in the same way that children are very selfish. You have to train them. Essentially, all I'm asking for is a Montessori school for cancer cells.
As long as you can, and that may be what Amy's pointing out here, where cancer becomes a non-issue. As she pointed out, I thought this was very good. We won't cure cancer necessarily; it'll become a non-issue, and maybe the way that happens is they get sent to Montessori school.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm in favor of that.
Well, in a way, and I got cut off for part of this. I apologize. My internet's acting up. But in a way, we've kind of done that with AIDS research. We've gotten AIDS down to the point that it is so treatable that somebody 30 years ago was expected to live, a couple of years, can now live their entire lifetime if they keep up with their meds and they're, have good doctor care. So it seems like, if we could get cancer to that level, that would be huge.
Yeah. One of the keys, and this was interesting in the article that I read about the breast cancer vaccine that's going into trials now, is that one of the keys with cancer is being able to treat it without causing an autoimmune response. So in other words, without having your immune system attack the healthy cells. And that's where they're really getting to now, is they're able to isolate certain enzymes that are present in cancer cells that are not present in the healthy cells. So it won't, you can target those and it won't cause an autoimmune response. So I think that's really key. And once they really nail that down, I think all cancer is going to be, as I said, kind of a non-issue. It's to be so treatable that it's just a pop into the clinic and get a shot kind of a thing. And
what David brought up is actually true. There's different ways they're finding out that cancer will spread, and it is starting to be identified as a collective term for some different things. Some may be promoted by virus, some by mutation. They're finding out that there's a few different causes there, but if you can stop them from multiplying or school them, it doesn't really matter how they get started as long as you can stop them from killing people. So let's move over to you, David, on the short-term side of things. When you look into that more limited length of time for your prediction, what do you see?
I'm seeing a growing trend recently of people who are feeling stifled by the current culture. They're feeling like there's an information overload, there's so much marketing and products, and they just want to detach and unplug and go live in a house that's the size of a tool shed and go on the road and commune with bears and that kind of thing. The thing that has made this particular crop of these people different from your garden variety hermit / gold rush prospector in the past is that these people have the internet now, and they have cell phones, and they've got 3GS, and they've got everything else. So I think we're going to see a growth in a class of person in society in the way that like the hippies or the yuppies are a certain sort of definable by their traits class. I think we're going to see more of these disconnected but connected types, the type that is living in the woods but blogs about it too.
These are like the folks, there's been a few folks blogging about their limited amount of possessions. Like, yes, all I have is my MacBook Air and nothing else.
There's sort of it's become a status symbol to not have things. It's become a status symbol to make do with less and to simplify, and there's blogs about it, and there's books about it, and Buy My Product, which will tell you how to rid your life of products, which I always appreciate.
Yeah.
But there are people who are, I mean, I see it almost every day, people disconnecting, where they just say, you know what, that sounds good. Let me go sit under a waterfall for a while, and maybe I just need to recharge, or maybe I actually am going to learn to use my hands for the first time ever. Maybe I'm going to learn how to build some sort of rain collecting device that I never had any opportunity to learn before. So and they're going to raise their kids. You know, a certain small percentage of these they're going to find that this lifestyle clicks with them, and they're going to raise their kids this way, and we're going to have a whole new generation of people who are apart from society while still maintaining these virtual links to society in a way that was never possible before.
That's really interesting, because I feel like even in my own little sphere, I've done a little bit of this myself. And it starts with small things. But a couple of years ago, we basically said, no more cable or satellite. We're done with that. I don't want to pay $900 for channels I don't care about. It's not that important to us to have what we have. So let's can that. And using my knowledge of current day technology and my understanding of how things work, we will get the kinds of TV and the kinds of entertainment we want, but we'll get it through these alternative means. It will simplify our lives, we'll pay less, and we'll be not supporting this machine. We'll not be supporting the man anymore. Sure. And it's a funny thing to sort of feel like you're rebelling against something that used to be this really cool, innovative thing, but now you're rebelling against it with your really cool, innovative thing. And I've seen it in other parts of my life and friends' lives where they're just sort of saying, all right, well, I'm going to do everything on my iPhone. That's all I'm going to ever have. I'm sick of having 5 devices. I'm going to keep this one device, and this is how I'll communicate. And I'll only accept phone calls from people I know, and I'll only follow people on Twitter who I know, and I'll only have Facebook friends who are relatives. And to them is this sort of cleaning it up, making it more simple, yet they're using these incredibly complex technologies and networks to be able to do it. That's always been an interesting, I wouldn't call it a contradiction, but just an interesting juxtaposition of those two things.
Sure.
I think it's really interesting when what you mentioned about going back and doing things sort of with your hands and creating things manually that we've kind of gotten away from. Because a friend of mine and I, we live across the country from each other, but we have a little blog where we share our craft projects, and we kind of joke about it. We say we're crafting for the apocalypse. So we have all these skills where we knit and sew and stuff, but nobody does that anymore because there's, all these machines that do it for us. But we like to do it. And we like to have the sensation of actually, creating something, as you mentioned, like tactile contact, and we share them over a blog. So it's an interesting sort of hybrid of the technology versus not. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think the idea of doing something productive with your hands is something that a lot of people have always known, and some other people are rediscovering. I think it's tremendously satisfying in a way that sitting and staring at a glowing box isn't always. And the other thing that I think is interesting, you talked about shutting down your cable and your satellite. There is a decision that has to be made then. When you say, I'm only going to use the internet for my entertainment, that means whenever I want to be entertained, I'm going to look up my Netflix queue, or I'm going to look on Hulu, or whatever it is. There is rarely I'm going to sit on the couch and flip channels impulse. Like, things have to be planned more. Things have to be considered. You have to choose the inputs that you have. And if you know what you want, if you know, like, hey, I'm not going to listen to crappy corporate media, in whatever form that takes. I'm only going to seek out these other interesting things. Then, yeah, you can have an enriching experience. And there are other people who don't want that task. They don't want that pressure to, like, well, I just wanted to sit on the couch and veg out. Are you saying now I have to look up something? I have to look up a movie to watch? What happened to just turning my brain off? And so there are some people that this lifestyle will not resonate with because they like being passive in that way. And I can't get too mad about it because that's my wife. We have arguments about it.
I think this is what's causing hoarders to exist.
Sure. And this is actually really, really interesting. I had this realization recently that was, it's my inbox or my RSS feeds or some link someone sends me. I'm going to read this later. Oh, there's this cool show. I'm going to put it on my Netflix queue. You can download this other cool audiobook. And it becomes too much after a while. And I had this light bulb that went off. No one tells you that, like, no one promises that you can do it all. No one promises that there are enough hours in the day for all the good things and all the cool things and all the things you're supposed to stay up on, all the TV shows or whatever it is. You, at some point, have to make a choice. You have to not care about some of it in order to just make your life livable so that you're not constantly inundated by this list of 5,000 unread things on your RSS reader. And, some people draw that line at different places than other people. But once you realize that you don't have to cram it all in, like, you can just pick and choose, it becomes easy to take that farther than you expected you would be able to and say, you know what? Yeah, the news is really depressing. And guess what? There's nothing I can do about it. It's okay to not hear about it for a while.
Yeah,
we've paid taxes whether I know about it or not.
We've never faced an unfiltered fire hose of information like we have now. And so the idea of, like, oh, I need somebody to select things for me is foreign. It's always been like, oh, I hate it that somebody is selecting things for me, right?
Exactly,
But we're actually starting to run into that where it's like, you know what? I really need a trusted source to winnow this stuff down because there's way too much of it.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I hate that. That's why I don't watch 24-hour news cable networks anymore. I don't watch any of that stuff because, it's stuff I have very little ability to do much about. It's stuff I would have never heard about 30 years ago. And now that I am hearing about it, all it's making me do is go, this is a terrible thing happening all the way over in Pakistan, and there's just zippo I can do about it. Or maybe I can donate to somebody, or I can do these other things. But then you're like, well, what does that make me unstable? Is everything crashing around me? And, it can be totally chaotic, which is part of the reason we checked all that stuff.
All right, let's move on to our long-term predictions, and we'll stay with you, David. These are the longer view, more like in 100 years, we'll all be in flying vegetables or some sort of thing like that. I hope I didn't take one away from you. What is your long-term prediction?
Hold on, I got to scratch this one out.
No asparagus.
Flying vegetables. We'll have underground burrowing vegetables for transport. That's the best I can do.
So just take the tuber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna climb on a potato, and the potato is native to the earth. It knows how to navigate underground in a way a human never would be able to.
Exactly.
Our delicate human fingers are not designed for the sharp rocks and dirty humus of the underground realm.
It has eyes.
Yeah, but not on the visual wavelength. Who knows what that potato can see?
That's right. It sees in the dirt wavelength.
There's a whole other spectrum of touch. It's like, you know how there's different wavelengths of light,
right?
And some of them are visible to the human eye and some of them are not. There are these massive spectrums of touch that some of them are invisible to, intactable to the human skin.
Exactly. So is that your long-term prediction, or were you going for something else?
Well,
I think you've stunned our other guests.
No, here's my real one. I feel like we're going to see more, and this also goes with the idea of disconnecting slightly from these giant monolithic organizations that may or may not have your best interests at heart. I think we're going to see a rise in microcurrencies.
Ooh.
And there are some of these experimental things going on in small towns, and then places in Europe and places where there used to being these principalities and these little fiefdoms. Whereas in the U.S. we kind of get off on the idea of we are massive and monolithic, and sometimes we don't have to do that. The idea of keeping a currency in a community is the benefits of that, and the ethics of that are well known. Idea of shopping locally, but there are other microcurrencies I've seen where individuals can barter essentially with individuals for labor, for goods, for things that may not have a direct dollar value, and you can create an economy around, hey, I'll work on your car and you work on my roof. And who cares whether it's $45 an hour versus your rate is normally $50 an hour, and like the conversion is in labor or is in time or is in effort rather than in having to convert everything to dollars and then back out, which is an inherently lossy conversion.
Isn't there a microcurrency in Toronto? Like the city of Toronto somehow created one, or people in Toronto maybe?
It's possible. Anything from a .ca domain, I just delete unread, so I may have missed it.
That's understandable.
But let me ask you this. So you're basically saying the currency goes away in that regard. It's labor for labor. It's an agreement between the roofer and the mechanic, and somehow that all sort of works itself out. How do you kind of quantify it? How do you make sure that fair shake on both sides?
I don't think you can ever do an actual loss of conversion. Sorry, I got my video lost there. Let me get you back up here. I don't think you can ever do a straight dollar for dollar trade in terms of hours. You have to go through some sort of intermediary. But
Sorry, she's not laughing at you. She's laughing at the video of Tom, who's not.
Because we can't see you. I was just mouthing along.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, you were doing a really good job too. I'm gonna try and turn it back on.
And I'm locking up.
It's not coming back on, which is great.
Oh, good.
All right. Well,
but you were in the middle of a good point.
In the background, but I feel like you're always going to have some sort of quantification, whether that's a local paper currency that's printed up that everyone can barter the value of, or whether you actually do numerical purchases with it. It's just that you are guaranteed that all that money goes to your local community rather than going through a bank somewhere and going through a hedge fund somewhere and going to line someone else's pockets.
Yeah, a lot of people laugh or scoff at the idea of getting an alternate currency, because it seems like on the large scale we're going the opposite direction, right? The euro is getting rid of local currencies, and the dollar sort of gets rid of local currencies in some countries, like Turks and Caicos Islands, for instance, which is part of the UK. In greater territory, uses the dollar, the American dollar, as its currency. But we also have alternate currencies. We just don't think about them that way. Coupons, points programs, all my Canadian friends, which I know, David, you probably don't have any, but my Canadian
enemies, no friends.
Canadian friends tell me about Canadian Tire money, which is this like currency printed by the Canadian Tire Company. That people then start trading around because it keeps its value or something. So there are microcurrencies. We just don't think of them that way. And when the recession first hit, when the banks were all in trouble, there was a lot of talk about maybe microcurrencies as a way to get through all of this instead of having this weird sort of inflated virtual currency, like creating currencies based on what you actually can make and produce.
I think it's smart. I think as people grow just distrustful of these organizations and the organizations grow to distrust the people, I think you're going to see more and more folks taking that into their own hands, which is what liberty is all about.
All right, we have Scott Johnson restarting his router. We have David trying to figure out his video. Audio podcast people, I know you don't care, but while they are doing that, Amy, do you mind going ahead and we'll move to you for your long-term prediction because we can actually see you.
No problem at all. So for my long-term, I actually went a little more connected. I like David's ideas. I think they're very interesting with the whole less connected. But I actually went a bit more. I did go along the lines of sort of the minimalist thing. I think within like the next 150 years, we're going to get to sort of that Star Trek 4 kind of thing where, you know, Scotty says, oh, a keyboard, how quaint. And I think we're going to get there where we're not going to have all these devices that require us to physically interact with them as much. I think we're going to have a very, very small device that does everything. It's going to be, it's going to be able to do all of our computing. It's going to be a phone. It's going to be a camera. And the camera piece I'll get back to because I have more interesting things to say about the camera piece. But it's basically going to do everything. And it could even possibly be like implanted. So we don't even have to carry anything with us. It's just on us at all times. And, you know, as currencies and everything are going more digital, we can use it to pay for things. We just run our hand across some sort of reader device and boop, we paid for something and it came right out of our bank account or our credit card. And then the camera piece of it, since if it were to be some sort of an implant, it could use our senses to record everything around us. And it would be able to also kind of record our emotional state at that point in time. So you'd be able to record everything you see and everything you hear, and then also sort of recapture your emotional state at that moment. So like, I took my kids to Disney World last week, and I can go back and I can look at the pictures and I can look at the video and everything and go, oh, I remember that. That was fun. But with this device, when you went back to review it, you would literally sort of be taken back there emotionally.
We have everyone back, by the way. Scott and David are back.
We both got lost.
Yeah. Okay. So you're Scott. What do you think? I've got some thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah,
first.
we've had probably our fair share on the show of people thinking about what kind of interfaces would be a part of our lives in the future, what devices we would still have, if we would do things with our brain, if it would be implant,
or whether it'd be freezing. Yeah,
right, exactly. But I always
it's just not. It's just not cooperating with you.
It's because his implant.
The internet is against you, Scott.
Oh my gosh, it's killing me.
He's got to get his implant calibrated properly, and then he'll be able to upload directly from his brain into the internet, and everyone else will be able to read it.
Maybe he's just not thinking clearly.
I hate the internet.
Says the man who makes his living from the internet.
Hey, I make my living from the internet, and I hate it just as much as anybody. So
actually, it's the people who make their living from the internet who hate the internet because they have to deal with it all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
So Scott, I think you seem clear. Keep going.
Okay.
Don't hesitate. Oh.
Crap.
It was just that split-second pause that caused it. I think it is tied into your brainwaves somehow.
It's got to be. I don't know. Every time I start thinking hard, so let me be real dumb here. Me like Amy's prediction. How's that?
See? Clear as a bell. Not a buffer in it.
Right
on. When Amy first started to give her prediction, I started thinking, I think we'll still need various form factors for different types of things when you were saying one device. But as you went on, I realized you're thinking even farther down the road than I was thinking, where forget needing to reach out and type something. You're talking about we just think whatever it is we want to do, and we don't have to control limbs or anything else. It's all happening up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. That's way down the road, but perfectly possible, right? I mean, we can already read brainwaves out and figure out if people are thinking like ball or tennis court or what, and we can actually allow people to control cursors on a screen with their mind. So it's an order of magnitude greater to figuring out how to like push info back in so that it becomes our the brain becomes our monitor essentially.
Right.
But it's certainly possible.
Yeah,
I feel like
and I
there's
think it'd be
there's a big
really, really
commercial
cool, and
opportunity
it would make air travel so much simpler.
Well, would we
You
even
know?
need air travel?
Oh, that's a good point.
It's all
But I mean, everybody says that now, and if you've seen the movie Up in the Air, there's this whole argument of face-to-face contact. There's not really a substitute for it, I guess.
well, I'll just VNC
you know,
into David and then walk around Los Angeles, have my meetings, and then come back.
there you go. Yeah, exactly. Although you'd need something better than VNC, I think.
There'll be something newer protocol. But David, you were saying you think it sounds like a commercial?
Well, no, I think there's a commercial opportunity there. I think you're going to get, like in the movie Total Recall, the idea that you can have your vacation without having to go on vacation. The idea that you can experience something that it's like playing a user-generated map in Team Fortress or something. The idea that someone else can have an experience, upload it, you can download it and relive it. I think there's money to be made there. I want to get in on the ground floor.
And that's kind of exactly where I was going with the whole kind of emotional camera piece was that, we all share, we love to share our pictures and we share our videos and stuff. Why not just share, this is how wonderful I felt about this experience kind of thing. Here, go experience it too, But yeah, you're right. That's very Total Recall. I hadn't even thought of it that way, but you're right.
The key distinction, I think, is we love to share our photos and our videos. Few people love to experience them. Unless they are particularly remarkable. So I think there's going to be a big growth industry in people doing all kinds of incredible things that everyone is going to be clamoring for. It's sort of like the App Store, where everyone can upload, whatever they've cobbled together, but they may not always find 1 million people downloading it. The ones at the top get everyone downloading it because they're the best. So you're going to have a class of daredevils who are going to go out and do all kinds of amazing things, or fall deeply in love, or obviously the porn industry is going to seize on this. And
Sure.
and just I had a fun time with my kids at Disneyland. As you're not going to make money with that. Like you got to go to the next level if you're going to actually do that professionally.
If I were forced to watch someone's pictures, but instead of just seeing their pictures, I actually experienced the picture the way they experienced it, and I got that jolt of recognition and the feelings and memories, that could become some sort of entertainment of itself, especially like, for an older couple whose kids are grown and gone, and they just don't, they've tired of looking at their own kids' pictures. They need some fresh kid pictures, to get that jolt of childhood nostalgia.
So you're
Yeah,
saying
we're
you're
kind
saying
of
the
already
photos
headed
would
that
have tied,
direction,
they'd
right?
have tied with
Because
them the
we've
actual
got-
emotions that people went through.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
Interesting.
I didn't mean to talk over you there, Scott.
No, it's all good. For all I knew, nobody could hear me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of headed that direction anyway now, aren't we? I mean, because everybody puts their pictures online. We've got YouTube for everyone to see, so people are looking at what, just regular people with a video camera are doing for entertainment as it is. So, if you had this whole host of everyone's experiences that you could sort of download and experience them yourself, it opens up a whole new era of I'm paralyzed because I have too many choices. I'm also interested, you mentioned like the App Store. That would produce kind of an interesting problem with it, wouldn't it? Because if you had different manufacturers for these chips, they might not be compatible kind of thing, so you have this whole proprietary sort of notion of, that they would have to come to some sort of a standard, wouldn't they? I mean, in order for it to be able to work on a large scale.
I'm not getting anything. You're on an AMD. Yeah, I'm on Qualcomm. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, this just isn't going to work. All right. Well, if that's your long-term prediction, I can't wait to find out what your crazy ass prediction is. What Amy Elk is your farthest of your far out predictions?
Okay, so my crazy prediction, I was telling my husband this, and I was like, okay, don't laugh at me. Let me get the whole thing out. I predict that within 1,000, 1,500 years, what have you, human beings will no longer be the dominant species on this planet for whatever reason. Either we kill each other off, or we used up all of our usable resources and decided we needed to go live somewhere else, or cancer evolved us into some other types of creatures. Who knows? But human beings will no longer be the dominant species on this planet. And what instead will be a sort of hybrid of a dolphin and an octopus. And the reason why
Dolphoctopus?
Yeah, there you go. A dolphopus.
An octofin?
I thought of octofin, but then that implies that they have 8 fins.
True.
But wouldn't they?
Well, they could, but here's the reason I went with dolphin and octopus is because, dolphins are very highly regarded as, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. But as far as I see it, the problem with them is that they don't have opposable digits. They don't have a way of grasping things. And the octopus is a very intelligent being also, and they are able to, grasp and sort of manipulate objects, and they can open jars and crazy stuff like that. And they are also very intelligent. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that, somehow evolutionary wise, the mollusk and the dolphin come together and produce some sort of a hybrid, and then they would be the dominant species.
Dude, I'm just trying to imagine this thing with all of its legs ripping up through the ocean and grabbing your boat and having its way. I mean, hopefully these would be kind creatures, this strange evolution you speak of, that they could maybe join with humans and for a better tomorrow. But do you think that's too hopeful? Do you think these guys would rise up and essentially become the modern day Kraken and take us all out?
Well, I would hope not. But, like I said, we will sort of not be the dominant species here anymore. So they might sort of look at us like pets, or, sort of, oh, aren't they cute? Kind of like we view squirrels or something. So that they would sort of not really be bothered by us if we are here in some form. But yeah, I mean, the reason I thought of the octopus is because I saw a thing on the Discovery Channel once where this octopus was smart enough to not only get out of its cage at night and crawl across the floor to the cage where they are, not the cage, the tank, where they were keeping the crabs that they used to feed the octopus. And it would crawl across the floor, get into that tank, eat all it wanted to, and then go back to its own tank and close the door again. So for days, they couldn't figure out why all their crabs were going missing. And it's because this octopus was smart enough to sort of cover its tracks. So that's what made me think of the octopus.
I mean, I could do that. I mean, I'm that smart. You saying I wouldn't survive? I can get crabs out of the cage.
Not with your 8 arms.
It would take me 4 times as long, certainly. Yeah.
I wonder what the whales would do in response, because as we know, I'm thinking of squid, not octopus, so maybe this wouldn't be a problem. But the squid are also very intelligent and in a blood feud with whales. They fight in the deep ocean. Would Dolphoctopus take a side? Would he assist his distant cousin, the squid? Or would Dolphoctopus bring peace to the squid whale war?
Dolphoctopus sounds like Dolph Lundgren with 8 arms. Continue. Go ahead. That's all I can picture.
Dolph is not a man of peace. We know this.
No. Yeah, we already know that.
Dolphoctogrin.
He's got 8 just happy smiles.
Oh, wow. I think maybe that it would depend on how it affected the climate and the civilization of the Dolphoctopus, whether they would even care to get involved. Because like right now we're not involved in the squid whale kind of thing.
Other than documenting it and putting it on Discovery Channel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
we don't
maybe
pick a side.
that's what they would do.
Yeah.
They would use their implants and project like images of, we're fascinated by watching this whole feud go on.
And would they run Human Week on the Discovery Channel?
Yeah, there you go.
It's a scary
We're
week.
that dangerous land animal. Whenever Dolphoctopi go onto land on vacation, you risk running into a human that might kill you.
That's right. And we'd have, the continents where the 10 most deadly humans live, kind of like Australia now is where, the 10 most venomous snakes all are,
Right.
That kind of thing.
I am impressed with the crazy ass prediction. I wasn't sure that you could top the implanted device, but I think you did. David, we turn it over to you. Crazy ass prediction, one really far out there. We're all going to be made of cheese someday, something like that. What do you got?
I know this sounds nuts. This sounds
That
totally
sounds
out there.
nuts.
But I think one of these days you might be able to get a cell phone that doesn't have a really onerous 2-year subscription commitment, but still gives you a lot of minutes and is still really reasonable priced.
No.
I know it's weird.
No.
I know.
Normally we don't pass judgment on our guest predictions because it is the crazy ass prediction, but you've gone too far, sir.
I'm sorry.
That is
crazy.
right up there with Miley Cyrus winning an Academy Award, I tell you.
Right.
What I would like to see happen is a connectivity, whether it's internet, whether it's cell phone, become a utility in the way that water is, where it's available to all without prejudice. And in fact, I'd like to see that to happen to water too, because I feel like we're far from having everyone on the globe have access to clean water. The problem with making life better for everyone is that they reproduce when you do, and that society becomes unsustainable. So I feel like on a long enough timeline, everyone's got access to internet, cell phone, clean water, and I feel like what's going to happen is we're going to compete with each other because of resource scarcity, and we are going to build these bigger and bigger cities, and human labor is going to be required for so many different things. We see these megalopolises now, like whether it's in China, whether it's in Mexico City, whether it's in Brazil, these giant teeming masses of humanity, and the most successful human beings will therefore be the smallest, the ones that are least resource. They have the smallest resource consumption.
Smallest footprint, so to speak. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you're going to see a class of humanity develop that is nimble, is quick, can dart around in all the warrens of some ghetto, and you're going to be able to see a technology arise that allows someone to pass their acquired knowledge from generation to generation, so that a human being doesn't have to spend the first half of its life catching up to where his parents were at that point in life. So here's the combination of things: big cities, small people, smart people, and the final ingredient to this is the people who are shunning the cities, the people I mentioned earlier in the program who are going to go out and live in the woods are going to evolve the opposite direction. They're not going to reproduce. They're going to be large. They're going to be lumbering. And eventually you're going to have this dichotomy between this like anthill of humanity and these just sort of moseying folks out in the woods. They're going to be so distinct that they will be non-interbreedable. And yet, one couple, one freaky couple, just going to get so incensed with lust for each other that they are going to try, but they are going to fail. And it's going to be a good movie.
Yeah. And it will be a box office smash in both cultures, I'm assuming?
Right into your brain.
Yeah.
So will there be? I worry about the. I always worry about this, but the social implications of such things always make me think about the switch from being short people are sort of being discriminated against, and if you're 6'2", 6'4", tall, dark, and handsome, you get benefits because you are considered, better because you're taller. And you're saying that's going to switch. Will the smaller people actively engage in prejudicial sort of behavior against the tall wooded people?
The first generations will, because they'll remember what it was like. But we're talking about a long timeline. We're talking about, especially if the short people have an ancestral memory, have a Jungian collective unconscious, whereas the wooded people don't. They shun this technology that allows us the information to be passed from generation to generation. And so they're going to be ever trusting in a way that the short people never will be. Short people will be very suspicious. They'll be a cunning race. And so they are going to learn how to exploit the tall people for maximum benefit. It's not going to be good until one short person realizes that this is unjust. In a time when justice means nothing anymore, when the very notion of justice as we understand it has been corrupted, they're going to stand up for what they believe to be right because they found an old book in some thatched hut somewhere that said everyone deserves to be treated equal, whether they are tiny and skittering or large and covered in a downy fur. It doesn't matter. They're all endowed with equal rights under the sun god. And so this person is going to be immediately destroyed by his culture who does not value life.
I think it's probably a copy of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, because you've got a whole Morlock-Eloi parallel there that you could draw from.
There's a little Planet of the Apes going on here too, in my estimation. You've got again, there's a prejudice there. It's a switch. It's like, oh, well, we test monkeys and we treat them badly and we treat them inhumanely, and oh, how the tables have turned. Now I'm the testee and they're the smart ones, and it seems like you're the testee. I'm the testee, Tom. I'm the testee. But that's the difference. I love that kind of future in my science fiction. I hate it in my reality, so I really hope you're wrong.
The difference between my proposed reality and the Planet of the Apes is that mine is not a veiled racial allegory.
Not even thinly veiled.
Here's the question I have: where do you draw the line between short and tall? Is it literally like, are we talking like little people short, like 3-4 feet tall? I mean, I think we can all agree that Scott would be among the tall people,
6'4",
and down covered.
Me and my little 5'3", am I considered a short person? Because I'm short now. But
well, the distinction is left to the magistrates.
Sort of a society, would I be short, or do you have to go even shorter?
Well, we're talking about evolutionary changes. So it's not like there's a commission. There's no death panel that says you are too short. What happens is that your children and your children's children have to fight for resources in such a way that that they are naturally selected for the shorter, more efficiently fuel-burning engines, if you will. And so eventually you're going to find that there's a race of people that can survive on a carrot and a half of a sugar snap pea. And that's all they need for a full day of working in a mine. And of course, if you could feed an individual a carrot and half of a sugar snap pea, or feed another larger individual 6 full prime rib dinners, as a mine owner, which are you going to choose? I mean, I think the choice is obvious, and it's hard to hold that against them. It's hard to evoke a moral judgment when a simple economic one will do.
All right, David's video froze up again on us, so I think that's a sign clear enough that it is time for us to move on to 4 questions. 4 Questions is the segment of the show where each of our guests face 4 rapid-fire questions about the future. We ask that you not stop and think, just answer with whatever comes to mind. It's a free association time. Here we go.
All right, I'm going to start with questions that aren't showing up for me because okay, here we go. I'm going to start. Amy Elk, I'm asking you your questions. I didn't even request that. I'm just thrilled that it's the truth. So are you sitting comfortably is the big question we always ask.
I am, yes.
All right, well, here we go. This is a very important one, this first one. In the future, if I was to sneak up on you in a sound booth while you were recording something, what animal noise should I make to maximize my ability to scare the crap out of you?
A duck.
A duck is right. Correct.
Steve?
Ding, ding, ding. Not Steve. Maybe Steve. What will be our reaction when we finally dig deep enough to find cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers?
Run away and, oh God, I hope they're not ducks.
Yeah. Well, under Dave's world, it's these are maybe the tiny people that we're so worried about.
There you go.
Number 3, what is the best cheese?
In the future?
Yeah.
Gouda, because it's a Gouda.
Oh, all right. It's a Gouda.
It's not
cheese.
just a Gouda. It's the best.
That's right.
Good answer. And then finally, your 4th question. What future cartoon will you do voice work for?
Oh, wow.
It could be a current
one that hasn't been created yet, but one where I get to do all the voices on my cartoon demo and then some.
Correct.
Yay.
All those. Correct answer. Very good. Nice job. You have passed the test. My Skype held. I don't know what else I could ask for, Tom.
We could ask for David Malki's connection to work as well. We are feverishly reconnecting him right now. I'm sorry that he missed your answers, Amy. Those are good answers.
Yeah.
I heard them all on my brain chip.
Oh, good. We should have Skyped into your brain. I apologize for that. That wasn't good planning on my part. But David, you're familiar with 4 questions?
Sure.
Okay. Are you sitting comfortably?
I'm doused in kerosene, so yes.
Good. Then we'll begin. David Malki, question number 1. Is there anything a tuba can't do?
The only thing a tuba cannot do is dry my tears.
It's true. It's really true.
Baby.
God, it's true. Question number 2. What kind of beards will the aliens have when we meet them?
They'll be backwards, and so we'll think they're facing the other way, and that will be our downfall.
Ew. Don't look at the beard. Look at the knees. That's how you know which way they're going. Question number 3. Reptilian man or Astro Man?
Reptilian man in a fight, Astro Man as a lover.
Well played.
I'm just the opposite. I've got it all backwards.
And question number 4. In the year 2525, if man is still alive, will we still need beets or tubers of any sort?
We will need them not for nourishment because that will be derived extensively from stellar matter, but we will need them for lubricant for our yam-based factory machinery.
The gross yam product of our country will be great in those days. And thank you very much, sir. You have finished the 4 questions and finished them well.
And transportation as well, as we established earlier.
Of course.
There's nothing you can't do with a yam.
The yam has 1,000 eyes.
That's what my mother taught
me. And yam it, she was right. Sadly, now that I've said that, we are done with the show.
And sadly, now I have a really great connection, and I don't seem to be having dropped calls at all. So that's awesome. But you know what? I think I got the gist of the middle part of the show, and that gist was incredible. So we have our guests to thank for some amazing predictions.
Amy Elk, thank you very much for being on the show. It was a pleasure to see you again and predict some future with you. Let the fine folks know where they can find you on the internet.
I'm at amyelk.com. You can also hear a couple of my podcasts on the Tech Jives network at techjives.net. I do the Apptastic iGame review with Chris Pope and Justin Laura, and also Today in Technology History.
Excellent. Unfortunate acronym, but great show.
Yes.
David Malki, I should have explained better at the beginning. Wondermark is a fantastic comic. I stumbled across it years ago and have been addicted to it. Read it every time you put it out. So let me thank you for that and let folks know what else you do on the internet and where they can find it.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, Wondermark is the comic at wondermark.com. And also, we do a weekly podcast called Tweet Me Harder. It's the world's first, best, only, and last talkback-enabled interactive audio pod blast, where we do this. We solve problems, and we solve all the world's problems every week.
And why does the world keep coming up with new ones? So that you can make another episode.
Yeah, it's very kind of it, in fact. But that is tweetmeharder.com.
Scott Johnson, do we have any business to take care of before we jet out of here?
Just a reminder to folks that if they like this show, they might also like Current Geek Weekly, which we record every Friday afternoon and evening, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Twit Network. So I would recommend they check that out as well. I've had some really, really cool recent episodes, and I know that the listeners of this show might like that as well if they're not already checking it out. So check it out at currentgeek.com.
And don't forget to leave comments at our website, fourcastpodcast.com, or you can send us an email, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again to Amy and David. Thanks to Scott. Thanks to Jammer B for running the board. And thanks to you for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
In the future.
future is now,
only
Tom.
32 years away.
It's actually 32 years away. Wait.
Goodness. Stupid
Well, that was
internet.
so
I don't
much
know
fun,
what's going on.
guys.
I was a blast while I was here, so thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry you
Well,
guys
you know,
had the
you can always
tech
listen
problems.
to it later.
Yeah, that's true.
You should try listening to the show at FourCastPodcast.com, Scott. I think you might like it.